It's Monday, April 4th, and this morning I'm thinking about life cycle cost analysis. We get a lot of phone calls from consumers right now that are looking to switch from conventional fossil fuel fired HVAC systems over to heat pump systems. And at Evolve Thermal Energy, we specifically focus on ground source heat pump systems. And just thinking about that conversation with the consumer and how that compares to the conventional marketplace when you're, say, just replacing a furnace like for like with another furnace. I know it's a very busy gas marketplace out there in Ontario, and I think a lot of the quoting that happens is really just based on what's the existing equipment that's in the house. Okay, we have a 60,000 BTU furnace. Let's replace like for like. So I think that does happen quite a bit of the time. With a heat pump system, of course, we can't do that. We need to understand more about the building envelope, and we also need to present the business case to the consumer for making that investment. And typically there is a divide or a delta between the cost of a fossil fuel system and the heat pump system. So we need to overcome that price, that differential that we have with the heat pump, and show where the value is. Now, with a ground source heat pump system, the value is there's values up front and there are also long-term values. And I think the long-term values are really important to highlight because that ground loop heat exchanger in essence is providing 70% of the thermal energy needs for the building for the lifetime of the building. That's for heating, cooling, and hot water. And that makes a huge impact on energy bills because we're really only exposed to 30% of that equation. I buy electricity from the electric grid to power the process to move the energy, so move the thermal energy for heating from the ground loop into the building, and then in cooling, vice versa, I move the thermal energy out of the building for cooling into the ground loop. So that thermal energy exists in the ground. It's free to use. We just have to power the heat pump process and the circulators to move it through the system. And so it's important to understand that business case or help the consumer understand that business financial case of what that looks like. And so the question I ask in my head is, do I think that fuel prices, the comparative, whether it be natural gas, oil, propane, do I think those prices are going to be higher in 2030 and beyond, or do I think they're going to be the same as today, or will they be lower as we have to take some kind of assessment here and get that understanding. I think for the most part, many people would suggest that, if we looked at 2020 and compared fuel prices in 2030 or energy costs in 2030, they'd expect that energy costs will probably continue to rise at an annualized pace as they always seem to have done, right? We do have some upward pressure on those fuel prices today, being carbon pricing, geopolitical events, supply-demand issues that we're seeing today. So some of the dramatic increases that we're seeing right now may subside somewhat, but overall we can expect a certain increase to continue. So it's important that we show consumers what that means to them in their pocketbooks for the life of the equipment. A typical gas-fired furnace has a useful life of 10 to 15 years. And within that range, you can expect that more significant maintenance events will be occurring. So they're going to have a capital outlay beyond 10 years to replace a blower motor or a gas valve or what have you. So really useful life being 10 to 15 years. So what are the energy costs for that furnace for its lifespan, 15 years? How does that compare to what the energy costs are for that ground source heat pump, considering that 70% of its thermal energy is coming from the ground on site for free, and the rest of the operation cost is what we're paying for from the electric grid to power that process. So we need to compare those things and build that investment case for the consumer. Now, most cases you give somebody a economic payback in less than 10 years, and most people will think that's a reasonable payback, and that's a successful project. Beyond that, it gets tougher and tougher to make sense. But my message to everyone is there's values and benefits in ground source heat pump systems that go beyond the economics. Some people absolutely these days just do not want to have fossil fuels in their home. They don't want to worry about the carbon monoxide. Remove it, put a ground source heat pump in, right? They want a more comfortable home, top quality HVAC system, right? So ground source heat pump. So there's a lot of things that may peak with a particular consumer, and part of our sales process is to figure out what it is that the consumer is interested in and whether or not a ground source heat pump system is a fit for them.